While he gets his presentation set up, I'll just introduce Dr. Glenn Miller. Our director, Bob Fulkerson, refers to him as a world-renowned mining expert. He is a professor and the director of graduate program in environmental sciences and health at the University of Nevada in Reno. His research interests include the effects of mine waste on aquatic systems. He holds a PhD in agricultural chemistry from the University of California at Davis. Please welcome Dr. Glenn Miller.
Thank you. I'm just going to have some numbers here that have nothing to do with the science of this, but just to give you a feel of what would happen if some of Senator Horsford's proposals were considered. We produced in gold about 5.34 million ounces, and this is 2010. 2011 numbers are obviously are now. That's 72% of the gold in the country, so we're by far about 3/4 of the gold. 3/4 of that gold is produced in open pits. It's about 26% in underground operations. Underground operations inherently have much lower impacts than open pit mines. Open pit mines, just because they create these large voids, water issues, there's a lot of things on the surface were exposed. The amount of money that brought into the mining industry was $6.54 billion. That's a chunk of change for that 5.34 million ounces of gold. But if this year, and I use a conservative number of $1,600 per ounce. I think Laura said it was $1,700, and it's gone up more than that. But that would translate to $8.5 billion total. That's a lot of money. And if you had a 5% tax on that, which is what Plan was proposing, and went a long ways to getting that on the ballot, that would be about $425 million. That won't solve Nevada's financial problems, but it certainly will help. And that 5%, particularly during times of these incredible profit margins, is actually a very reasonable tax base, and something I think that everyone should think about. You can see what's going on in gold production since 1980. It's exploded. It peaked about 2000, and the numbers have dropped off, and the value have dropped off, except the last number I've got there is 2008, and all of a sudden, even though the production has continued to drop, it went up in 2010 to about 6%. The value of it has gone up from what then was about $4 billion, $5 billion of gold, all the way up, and it's going to continue to stay around $8 or $9 billion a year for quite some time. Just as far as time constraint, I want to give some time. Let's go on. I want to show you a couple of slides. Maybe I'll get up to this. This is the cold pit lake, and this one is filling. This is when it was started filling. It was overflight here about 10 years ago now. This is now up here, but one of the things that we really need to consider, it's not toxic water. It's not like a Berkeley pit, but it's degraded water. It doesn't meet drinking water standards anymore. It used to. It doesn't meet municipal industrial standards anymore. It used to. And it doesn't meet agricultural standards. It used to. So we're going to have about 35,000 acre-feet of water in that pit that will not be, and all it will be is basically a pool of water. The other thing about this is because these are very steep walled slopes, it's very dangerous to go down in there, even though I've told Newmont to prepare for the time when they sponsor the Gold Quarry Regatta on their massive pit lake quarry. But it's very difficult to do it, and none of the mines, except perhaps for one, are thinking about long-term uses of this pit-like water. There will be some that will be particularly degraded, won't support fish. Most will, however. And right now, Newmont particularly, all they want to do is say we're going to put a fence around this pit lake, and we're not going to let anyone in there. And I'm a 500-year guy. After I don't care about after 500 years. We can argue that whether 8,000 years, but I'm a 500-year guy. These are geologic impacts that will be there for hundreds of thousands of years. And those kind of impacts are ones that we should not allow to at least some consideration and a requirement that actually these pit lakes, they have to look for some use. Maybe they have to slide the slopes down a bit more so they aren't so steep. Maybe a couple more. I want to look at this. Okay, this is the other one of the other problems. This is actually a heap. When you crush up rock, pile it up, and then do big sprinkler systems or drip irrigation systems on heaps. These can be quite small. It's one of the major ways of getting gold out. It's very efficient. Cyanide, which is not the biggest risk in the entire operation, is very efficient. But at the end of the time they do it, you know, they talk about rinsing it. Well, they don't rinse it. All they do is recirculate the water until it's evaporated. But then, whenever a rainstorm comes, those heaps begin to flow again. Very contaminated water. It'll take at least 80 years for most of these for even one pore volume to go through one flush of water, and that doesn't take out most of the constituents. So these are 500-year impacts too. And the water coming out at the bottom, and this will be anywhere from a couple gallons to maybe 30 or 40 gallons a minute, will need to be managed in perpetuity. It is a serious problem that is still not really grasped. Then there's one other one that I want to take a look at, and go to the next one. There's my 6 minutes. Maybe we can take that phone off. A couple more. Just keep on going on. This is actually Leviathan Creek. We've worked a lot. You can't see it very well. This is pure crystalline, very, very good water, trout stream water. This is coming off a mine that was closed in the 60s. It's still a heavily contaminated site to basically sterilize that stream. So this acid drainage is really a problem. One more. Okay, this is the same pit that Tom showed it. This is a great pit because it shows a few things on there. The water now is very acidic. It is actually toxic. Nothing will survive in there beneficial except for Tom's microorganisms. This is another one. There's a road down here and say, okay, that's good, that's access route. They can't get down that anymore because it's failed, because it's so steep. Water gets in it, it slides down, the whole thing is sliding down. There is no access to this pit. And in fact, they can't even do any monitoring because the pit is such a problem. This pit, when it comes up and they basically neutralize, they're dumping in, I think, 10,000 tons of lime a month to get to the pH up, and it's quite a problem. But we're going to have probably 20, 30 pits of this type around Nevada. What are we going to do with them? There is going to be a real long-term resource loss, both in water quantity and then in water quality. And the resources that if we require the mining industry to do something to make them into a productive use could be very beneficial, but it's real expensive. There's a reason these slopes are so sharp, because they don't want to haul the rock away. But when they're that sharp, you don't want to be down there canoeing, maybe doing a little fishing, and all of a sudden have 1 million tons of rock fall down on you when you're doing that. It is a real problem. And then one last one here. Oh yeah, this is a great one. If you drive between Reno and Winnemucca, this is Florida Canyon. This heap is going to have some of the most contaminated water coming out of it, and what they're planning on doing is evaporating it. But I calculated the tonnage, it's well over 100,000 tons of salts. They're going to come from this heap because of geothermal water, and the notion of this is they're going to try to evaporate all that water in large ponds, but they're going to have to deal with those long-term salt issues, and they aren't being dealt with at all. So there's long-term problems that are probably given to, well, after my great-grandkids, who cares then? But for that long, there will be costs that somebody's going to have to pay. That's it.